Good evening. Welcome to Hellenic TV. A special guest tonight is Mr. David Burrowes, very well known to our community, MP. Welcome, Mr. Burrowes.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here again.
It's nice to have you here and have the opportunity to ask you a few questions and let the people know about your views about many things.
Yeah.
Before I go to that, would you mind giving me a short biography, very short, where are you born, a little bit about, education, family and all this, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so
I'm a bit lazy, I don't
So I've lived all my life in the borough of Enfield, growing up in Cockfosters. I was born just over in the maternity hospital in Barnet in 1969. And then I grew up in Cockfosters with my family, and then I went to school in Highgate, the university in Exeter, studied law, and then came back to continue to practice law, defending some of the local villains of Enfield and Haringey and beyond in the solicitor's firm in Enfield, and also at the same time then became a local councillor representing my area of Cockfosters, and then I moved to Winchmore Hill, and then met my lovely wife, and together we have had a number of children, 6 children, who are now aged 19 to 10.
Beautiful.
And we now live in Southgate. And I've been Member of Parliament now for some 12 years.
12 years.
So I was elected in 2005. And so, yes, apart from a love of politics, I love my faith as a Christian. I'm very committed Christian in my local church in Enfield.
You go in every Sunday to church?
Yes. My Christian faith is very important to me. And Sundays is always a day. When I first was elected, I had the Cypriot community saying, look, please can you come to this event on a Sunday or this event, because sometimes people have these events, particularly the caterers.
I know you can't go to Sunday's events because I ask you for an event, you say, no, I have to go to church.
That's the thing. And not just church, just spend time with the family. So Sundays is a day when we very much respect. And I think the community quite recognise that.
Yeah.
And that's an important part of my life. Also, I love sport. That's part of my hobbies. I love playing a little bit of football when I can, a bit of cricket for the parliamentary football team. And then it's a delicate subject when I get closer to the Tottenham end of London here, as we're here in Hellenic TV, but I'm an Arsenal supporter, and that's something that's a passion of mine, it's a love, it's one that, it's a cross that I have to bear.
That's good. Lovely, beautiful. Now I'm going to go into some questions and then, see how it goes.
Yeah.
Another election, just 2 years on from the last one, okay? What will you be the main issues and what will you be doing to focus on your campaign?
Yes, so it's taken everyone by surprise, having this election. I was on holiday in Wales with my family at the same time that the Prime Minister was on holiday in Wales. I came back with a bit of a suntan from Wales.
Yes.
And the Prime Minister...
That's why you don't need makeup.
That's right. And the Prime Minister came back not with so much a suntan, but with a plan for a general election. And so that took us all by surprise. But we have another election, and it's going to be based primarily on the issue of leadership of this country, particularly as we approach the Brexit negotiations. And she wants the clear path of 5 years with her strong, stable leadership to do that. And that's going to be the key issue of who the electorate wants to be Prime Minister, who can represent them, providing the strength of leadership that obviously I think the Prime Minister Theresa May can give. It'll also be, I think, for constituents voting for their Member of Parliament, who can be the strong voice for them on issues particularly around Brexit and issues of challenges and opportunities that I know the community has. There's lots of different opinions about that. And then there's always the other issues as well, around local issues that people want me to stand up for them. And we can't forget obviously the issue of Cyprus. That is a particular pertinent issue at the moment with the talks resuming, both wanting strong leadership by the Prime Minister in terms of, we can perhaps talk about that a bit later, but also wanting a strong voice as well in Parliament.
Okay, we can stay into this subject anyway. What are your thoughts about the latest round of negotiations between, President of Cyprus and, Mustafa Kemal.
Yes. Well, I'm pleased that there's a resumption of the talks, and it was a shame that previously, through sadly, it seemed some game playing by the Turkish Cypriot side, things did stall. And it's important that we support the talks, and so talking is good. We want, and there's been injustice for so many years that every day that goes by is a day lost for justice, and so we must wish those talks well, but they must lead to a just outcome, and that's is an issue that I've obviously been involved in Parliament throughout my 12 years, raising that issue, wanting to ensure that, as far as the British government is concerned, that they are taking their responsibilities seriously. And my view is that responsibility entails not only wishing well and respecting the peace process and ensuring that is able to continue without external powers' interference. Particularly Britain has a responsibility, given its guarantor powers and respect for the independence of the island, to do that, but to make sure that it exacts its influence on Turkey. And as I know for so many years, as we know, the Turkish influence is so crucially important. And this is a crucial question, whether now President Erdogan, with his powers, we could call him a sultan, perhaps as much as anything else, given his additional powers that he's gained from the referendum, what that will mean for Cyprus. Will it mean that he wants to continue to exert the influence, the hand on the talks? Or can it mean, which I hope, and we must seek him to do this, is to respect the process and respect Cypriots coming to a conclusion that is based on what is just for Cypriots rather than Turkish influence. So I think what we need now at this crucial time is the Prime Minister, Theresa May, to be doing as she's done actually, and the Foreign Secretary. I've been involved, I've met with them, I brought other members of Parliament to meet with them, I've questioned the Prime Minister in Parliament and the Foreign Secretary on this very issue to ensure that we exert our influence on Turkey to respect Cyprus's independence and respect the peace process. So I'm hopeful that we can do that, and we need to get on and be able to do that and get back into government to pursue that course of action.
Okay, I want to stay on these Turkish situations at the moment, Mr. Erdogan, and after the referendum.
Yes.
What do you think? I mean, is that the way, forward for him? And do you think, it's acceptable for Europe and all this?
Well, there's been a referendum.
Yeah.
And there's been a decision. Now there's questions by many as to how
the only problem
how
is
much integrity there was
yes.
to the vote.
Yes.
This
is a point
yes.
where you.
I mean, it's different from our referendums.
Yes.
Where there was an integrity to the vote, and one has to respect referendums normally. But Turkey isn't a normal country in a normal democratic way, and so there are serious question marks about the result. But be that as may, the interesting thing is the dynamic. My understanding is that, particularly when one looks at the figures, Turkish Cypriots, who had the vote, they voted against. They voted no to Erdogan, not to have him to have the additional powers. The majority did not want him to have those powers, and my concern is that he may be well aware of that, and his reaction to that may not be a good reaction, because we've seen when the European Union was critical of him a month or two back and wanted to challenge him about human rights record and the like. He didn't react well to that. He doesn't seem to react well to challenge, and then he has a reaction which is a negative one, and so that does concern me about the future and how he will react. But we must use our diplomatic muscle, which is significant from this country, to try and encourage President Erdogan to realise that it is in his interest, and in fact the region's interests, to allow a solution to the Cyprus problem.
Do you think, Mr. Burrowes, I mean, politicians sometimes, I didn't have this down, but it came up to my mind now, sometimes they have to lie and pretend that they support something which, might be not right, so they can win the voters.
Well, sadly, I mean, I've seen over my 12 years in Parliament that people's view of politicians is very low. In fact, it's something which I was in some ways reassured when I was on holiday. I was watching an old Family Fortunes programme, going back to the 80s, and the suits and everything was different, and there was the sort of the power dressing square shoulders of the ladies, and the men in their big kipper ties and big suits. And then there was a question saying, who does the public not believe in? We had Santa Claus, apologise for any children watching this, fairies, and then number 3 or 4 was MPs. They don't believe in MPs. Back in the 80s, and that's still very much the case today. And so a really important thing actually that I stand for and others, and a responsibility, is to restore that trust, that when we say something, particularly at election time, we follow through with it, and that we restore that sense of belief and that trust and integrity in Parliament. And so, yes, that is a real issue. People look at politicians, and part of the rise of populism across Europe and beyond has been about the gap between the people and the politicians, and people losing trust and faith in the political system, and then using extremists outside of the political system to get their favour. And that's something which I believe we still have an integrity within our British parliamentary system, and important this election that we are true to what we say when we launch our manifestos and follow through with them, and that we don't just simply try and curry favour. One of the interesting things in Parliament is they have a prayer that begins each Parliament.
Do they?
Every day of Parliament begins with a prayer. So the Speaker Chaplain there, it's unique to Parliament. So for 600 years or so, there's been a parliamentary prayer, and in that prayer, one of the aspects that we pray for.
Some people, I'm telling you the truth and only the truth.
No. That's the oath we say at the beginning, effectively, of becoming members of Parliament. If we get re-elected, we do swear an oath of allegiance, but also to act with integrity and truth. But this prayer is actually saying that we don't do things from simply a desire to please. We seek the common good. And that is important. We don't just do things just to please, just to say things or do things just to please people. And at this election time, we mustn't just do that. And so, when I believe the Conservative Party will put in its manifesto again its commitment to the talks to seek a just solution, a reunification of Cyprus, that they are true to that word and they follow through with this. And that must mean respecting the process, and it must mean following through with ensuring that Turkey recognises that as well.
Okay, I'm going to come to that later on, talking about who you promise and if you keep your promises as a politician and all this kind of thing. But this one is a question about the Brexit and all these promises, which is promises again. Although your leader, Theresa May, has said that the issue of the legal status of EU citizens currently living in the UK, and as you can understand, I'm talking about our, compatriots, Cypriots, Greek Cypriots and Greeks from Greece, will be one of the priority during the upcoming Brexit negotiations. Yes. However, she has repeatedly denied to guarantee their rights to stay. Okay? So, something that Mr. Jeremy Corbyn has said he will do the minute he will be elected, come to power, independent of the progress of the negotiations. What do you have to say to that?
Interesting. One of the key pledges I'm making, in fact, is in my little. It's a pledge here, just here, which is that and in fact I said it during the passage of the bill to confirm that we were going to leave the European Union, the Article 50 trigger. I made it clear that, and I hear that it would be unjust and unacceptable not to guarantee the rights of EU citizens living in the UK, because plainly we owe it to our neighbours, we owe it to our friends, we owe it to our family to do that. It's the right thing to do, and also it's obviously a recognition of the considerable contribution that people make, and it must happen. Now the government have actually guaranteed that there will be no change in the status of EU citizens. There is no change of the status, and the issue is not a matter of principle of will we or won't we, or if will we. Is there an if in this? It's a case of process, and it's a process which the government are committed to follow through, not least because other countries, when the Prime Minister was elected as the leader of the Conservative Party, and the Prime Minister, she went and visited all the European Union countries, and she was wanting to get reciprocal rights guaranteed, because there is a situation also with UK citizens in EU countries who also have a period of uncertainty. And she was wanting to provide a certainty for both UK citizens in Europe and also EU citizens in the UK. She wasn't able to get that guarantee because a number of the country's leaders said we have to wait for the formal process to begin. So it's an issue of process which we now are in. But I am convinced, and in fact I've had that assurance from the Home Secretary as well as the Prime Minister said, is that plainly that is what we are intending to do, we will do. But we have to do it at the right time through the negotiation process. It won't mean that we're just going to wait to the very end of the process to give those guarantees. It's an absolute priority, the Prime Minister has said, and it has to be delivered on. And as far as I'm concerned, it would be totally wrong and unconscionable to have any diminution, any reduction, any change in the rights of EU citizens living in this country. And I'm making that pledge. I've said it here. I pledge to ensure that EU citizens living here have their existing rights guaranteed. That's my election pledge. It was back in February what I said, and it's something that I will continue to say. And I will not allow my constituents, my EU citizen friends and family.
They listening to you now.
Absolutely.
The people from Enfield and all over.
I will not let. The
promise.
EU citizens, absolute promise. Who are living in the constituency to have their rights removed. That will not happen under my watch.
That's lovely. Okay, nice to hear that anyway. Okay, now, staying on the Brexit, what was the main reason, in your own opinion, that the referendum was for? What was the main reason? Why?
The main reason was an issue of control, and that control comes in a number of aspects. As a Member of Parliament, I see for myself the significant piece of legislation that I have little control over. They are made and created in Brussels by the European Commission, and they don't have an accountability to Parliament. And we are simply nodding through many pieces of legislation that affect citizens of this country. And we need to have more control, in fact, restore the control over those laws. There's money that goes into Europe which we have not much say in, and we need to be able to restore the control over that
Might
money.
be one of the main reasons that was the money, yes?
Yeah, money's a big... But for
and,
me,
and the immigrants? How about the immigrants?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But for me, it was a fundamental principal issue of parliamentary sovereignty. I hope I'll be re-elected, depending on the goodwill of the people of Enfield Southgate.
Depending on these people,
of course,
and the promises you've given.
Absolutely. I can't presume on their goodwill. It's up to those people.
Yes.
But I hope I will. And that will be. But I can't do many things I'd like to do because those laws are made in Europe rather than Parliament. And that restoration of control will mean I'm busier, with lots more legislation. But there's a real example of this. Is that one of the frustrations and concerns is about immigration.
Yes.
Is the fact that there hasn't been sufficient control over immigration. It's certainly not about wanting to welcome immigrants to this country. We're all, one way or the other, immigrants. And we benefit from that in Enfield and North London. We see the benefits of our wonderful, diverse communities. But we want to welcome those skills, certainly so. I'm also, as you'll know, a keen advocate of refugees, of wanting to support more refugees coming to this country and showing our welcomeness to that. But the issue is having control over the numbers to enable those that come to this country will be contributing and be working and providing the skills we need. So we can't do that with the European Union rules. We can't do that because of the freedom of movement rules. And that needs to change. And one of the key messages from the referendum was there needs to be control over our borders. In fact, talking about elections, back in 2015, I said it very clearly in my election manifesto that unless the Prime Minister then was able to come back with a deal that gave proper control of our borders, I would be campaigning to leave the European Union. Now, he wasn't able to come back with such a deal on freedom of movement, so it led to me campaigning to leave the European Union, particularly about the issue of control of our borders, but a wider aspect of wanting our Parliament to be in control of our laws as well as our money and our borders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a couple of questions, 2-3 questions coming from various people,
Yeah.
because I was talking to a few people, yesterday and today,
Yes.
and they said to me, would you mind asking Mr. Burrowes
Yes.
questions? And one of the questions is, do you condemn that how the so-called Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus has an official English, embassy in Bradford Square? Do you
Yes.
have this in mind?
I know it.
You know it. So what can you do to close this down? I mean, it's not an official embassy.
Yes.
I mean,
that's right, and I don't recognise it as an official embassy,
okay.
and I don't give it the status or recognition of a so-called embassy.
Would you ask your government if you be re-elected to close it down?
No. I mean, they have various.
It's not a coffee shop. It's not.
No,
it's an embassy. You know what I mean? We're talking
They have
about.
various consular type access for a number of places. I mean, North Korea, for example, which they have a consular presence. I think the answer to the question. I mean, there's been a presence there for some years.
To my question,
The answer to the question,
not to mine,
yeah.
is to these people who are there and watching now.
The answer to the question is to solve the Cyprus problem, to ensure that we only have one representative of Cyprus, which plainly the properly internationally recognised representative is the Republic of Cyprus and continues to be the Republic of Cyprus. And the way to remove that presence is to ensure that the island is reunited. That is the way it's going to be closed down.
Okay. So would you ask your government if you?
The reality is
to close it down. I mean, this is a question, and
I've never been asked that particular question. Beyond the fact that there is a facility for informal consular activity from places and areas that aren't internationally recognised, and there's the government. People are free to set up offices if they want to. We're not the type of country that stops people setting up offices and putting nameplates on their offices and saying in a sense what they want to, but we do not give them the official recognition that maybe they crave. There's no status given officially by the British Diplomatic Service and by the government, and they may attend in their own name, in their own capacity of various events, but as far as the government is concerned, the only channel of representation in relation to diplomatic relations is through the properly recognised Republic of Cyprus. And so whilst there is a certain freedom for them to set up offices, there is not an official consular for the so-called TRNC to be able to close down because it doesn't properly exist officially. I mean, the danger you'd have if there was a big campaign to close it down, in a sense it would give it, ironically, a status it doesn't deserve, because you'll be closing down something that doesn't officially properly exist as far as the government is concerned.
Okay. All right, let's go to another question coming from another member of our community. Somebody told me you are a member of Conservative Friends of Cyprus?
Yes.
You are, yes.
I absolutely, of course, I helped. It's been going for some years as Conservative Friends. We've helped reform it. I'm the parliamentary chairman of the Conservative Friends of Cyprus.
Okay, this is another question, similar. Are you a member of the Conservative Friends of Turkey?
Yes.
Okay, so in this case, how you managed to be, in both?
Yeah, because what Turkey needs. I'm a friend of Turkey. I'm not a friend of President Erdogan. I'm not a friend of him.
Friend of Turkey, yes.
I'm a friend of
That's
Turkey,
right, yes.
because Turkey has a very important place in the region.
Mhm.
It has, it as a country, it has lots to offer, and that I have many Turkish friends. There are many Turkish-speaking friends in the constituency and community
Mhm.
who I am friends with and want to support them as they yearn for a more democratic Turkey. Then they need support. They need friends. They need friends to support Turkey. So when one's friends with a country, it doesn't mean one agrees with everything that they do. It means one's friends with the people and the country, not necessarily with the government. And so it's very important that there's people like me who are friends, because I can have an influence, and it enables me quite properly to engage as I do with the Turkish community, and also with politicians from Turkey.
Mhm.
And they engage me knowing very clearly my views on Cyprus, knowing that I don't in any way compromise on those, and that I can then speak about my concerns, about their policy towards Cyprus, and that's helpful.
Okay. I'm going back to my questions now, and I'm going to make it more easier for me as well, you know what I mean? Because what can you do when you re-elected to help the community, the business people, and people who need help to create, you know, more businesses and to be happy with their, you know, areas they live in?
Yeah, but I think we need to continue to have a stronger economy. You know, one of the remarkable features of the economy is the jobs creation. I mean, we've now got more jobs than back in the 70s that are being created, and that can only come. It doesn't come by chance. It comes from creating the business environment of generally a lower taxation economy, one where there's confidence in investing in this country, and allows people to set up new businesses, to be able to thrive, to ensure that the public finances are not out of control as they were under previous governments. And that means strong leadership. And so what I would say is it does come back to the leadership issue. To have a strong economy, you need the strong and stable leadership. We are in challenging times. No doubt the Brexit negotiations will lead to some ups and downs. We already have the exchange rate impact that those who are close to that market will be particularly concerned. We have the financial markets who don't like uncertainty. The worst thing for those markets is uncertainty from an unstable, chaotic leader that I believe Jeremy Corbyn is. And so you need the strength of leadership that the Prime Minister has. So that's very important for business confidence. I will always vote and support lower taxation for businesses. There's a significant ongoing concern about business rates and about those small businesses on the high street. And we need to ensure that the revaluation that's taken place still enables small business rate reliefs. We need to avoid any jobs taxes that, and certainly my party doesn't support, but the others may. Corporation tax should be reduced, not increased, as the Labour Party seek to do. We must have a business environment that is all about lower taxation and making life simpler for businesses, rather than the complications of red tape and taxation complications that have happened in the past. So all of that, I'm on the side of businesses, particularly small businesses. They're not helped, frankly, the high streets, when they see a cycle lane going through that is a whole lot of money and causing a whole lot of grief and upset. And there's businesses along the high street in my constituency would have seen takings go down by 50%. That may lead to the loss of business. And those are issues that greatly concern me. And one of the issues I've been campaigning about is that the council do not implement the cycle lane in the manner they are.
You are involved in some kind of activities. What activities and what events are you involved in it?
Within
the community, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, because I heard that what is your relationship with dogs? For example.
So that's right. Yeah, that's a good leading question. People may well see me out and about, particularly over these next 6 weeks. I go everywhere with my dog Chumley, but I do outside of election times as well. I'm a great dog lover, but sadly, he's a little while ago now. He was attacked in Arnes Park, and it made me realise the impact of dogs that are out of control, and how it's often not the issue of the breed, but the dog owner. That we need to support responsible dog ownership, and there's responsible dog ownership awareness events taking place at Durrance Park and Albany Park, and so supporting those as well as taking place in the park, past at Arnes Park. But that's just part and parcel of just being supporting community events that are happening around Enfield in our lovely parks.
Okay. In case if you don't be re-elected, would you consider acting Korea?
Well, and please do, if you'd like to offer me a part as a sort of dress rehearsal for that future career, we've been in discussion about one or two opportunities that may arise in your great illustrious plays. But hopefully I won't have to
come to me and ask for work.
Hopefully,
no. I wish you.
My main job can continue as a member of Parliament, which is about service. It's about serving the community. And the issue that just wanted to draw another part that has that since the last election, which I've particularly got involved in, is an aspect that does involve Cyprus, but also involves the international community, which is the issue of cultural heritage, where there's been a real concern around the destruction and desecration of cultural heritage. We've seen with Daesh, with ISIL, how they destroyed Mosul and they destroyed culture. They try to just cleanse culture, and then they steal antiquities and sell them on the markets. We also know that in other occupied lands, not least in the north, where there's been that desecration and of culture and heritage. And so I set up an all-party parliamentary group in the last couple of years with Tasula Hajatofi, who's known to many, who's been involved in this issue for some years, a refugee from Famagusta. And we set this up and established this not least to ensure that the government take their responsibilities seriously, and to ratify the Hague Convention, which we have just got through. The Cultural Property Bill, now Act, has got through, that ensures that people will be seriously prosecuted and punished for stealing antiquities from occupied territories. And that's important to show our international collaboration and concern on those issues. So as a member of Parliament, it can be issues around dogs, it can be issues around Brexit, it can be issues around Cyprus and the reunification of the islands, but it can also be international issues of concern around cultural heritage. So we can be spread far and wide, and I hopefully have the opportunity to continue to do that after June the 8th.
Do you support arts? I mean, let's say, for example, you support local groups, and how can they go about it to get some financial help from the local authorities?
So it can be on a smaller scale. It can be in a local estate agents where you have arts that are exhibited, fine arts exhibited, and supporting local artists is something which I seek to do, and artists that are known to us who do that.
Yes.
And it's the issue of culture, though, is something which can be local, can be national, and as we've just spoken about, it can be international. And we must find ways to continue to invest in our arts. There'll be, inevitably, when we have public finances which are challenged, there'll be limits to public taxation increasing. And so we must be creative. Obviously, there's the National Lottery to help. There's also ways that we can encourage philanthropy. There are some benefactors out there who perhaps we could learn from other countries who perhaps could do more to support. We can, from a tax point of view, we've done quite a lot on this, make it effective and efficient to incentivise gifting towards the arts. And so there's a range of opportunities. I suppose the other aspect which I've been challenged about is in our schools, our children, to develop the creativity that's there, because whilst the government have rightly concentrated on the basics, which wasn't always there in terms of ensuring people are learning to be able to read and write, to be able to their maths and to be able to ensure that they have modern languages. There's also the need for creativity and support, and I know that many of the community are concerned that there is support to ensure that schools are properly funded to allow that to happen, and I'm working very hard to encourage the government to ensure there are the proper funds available in our schools for arts as well.
Okay. Two more questions. The first one is, why do they have to vote for you, our audience?
I think it's a very simple choice in many ways, because it's this election more than anything else is about leadership. It's about, do you want the strong and stable leadership of Theresa May as Prime Minister, or what I see in Parliament, and I think many Labour MPs and others will probably join me in agreeing with me, is that would you rather want the weak and chaotic coalition led by Jeremy Corbyn? That's a straight choice, and it's important, particularly at these times when we have the Brexit negotiations, whether one voted for leave or remain. We're now moving forward to leave the European Union, and we need, who do you want there at the table with 27 other countries negotiating on behalf of this country? Do you want Theresa May or do you want Jeremy Corbyn? I would have thought most sensible people will want Theresa May to lead those negotiations. That's the crucial issue. Having said that, another issue is your member of Parliament. Who do you want to be your voice? When there's challenges, when there's issues around Brexit, we won't all agree on this issue, but have you got a member of Parliament who can speak up for you? And I think I've got a good record of speaking up for people and challenging the government, in fact disagreeing with the government at times, and leading cross-party MPs to disagree and come together to change the law. I've done that, and so I am someone who does speak up in Parliament regularly. I speak up regularly, particularly about Cyprus and what Cyprus needs, and crucially for the Cypriot community, what Cyprus needs at this time, this crucial time for the talks that are resumed. It needs strong and stable leadership. The same words that we'll hear throughout the election, but it's important for these talks that there is a leader there in the Prime Minister Theresa May who's able to influence Turkey and able to ensure that we support what I really hope. And I want to ensure that this is the last Parliament, frankly, the last Parliament when Cyprus is not united and do not have justice for my constituents. This is my fourth election for Enfield Southgate, and it's a tragedy that we're still having to talk about making pledges around the Cyprus problem that's ongoing. I don't want to, I want this to be my last election, not my last election as a member of Parliament, but my last election talking about
Cyprus problem.
It needs to be a talk about a Cyprus solution, and a Cyprus which is a regional hub of stability and growth for the rest of the world to learn from.
Okay, and finally, when you are back in the House of Commons, okay, would you consider a camera role in a new production in your area?
A new production?
A new production.
That would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Of course. I mean, I offered you earlier on when you are not in, but now, while you are in, back in the House of Commons, will you?
An opportunity.
An opportunity.
An opportunity to be involved.
As a hobby. Yes.
As a hobby.
Yes.
It'd be interesting. Now, my only resident, I say yes. I make this pledge. I'm happy to be involved in production. My only hesitancy is realising that you have very interesting and fun comedy moments. It just depends what part I have.
That's right.
But it'll be joy because it's great fun. And what is excellent about your production is that they're fun and they have really good messages. And hopefully people see from me is that I also have fun and full of.
Definitely, you have to have fun.
I have a sense of humour and don't take myself always too seriously, which none of us should do.
Yes,
and
this is what we're doing now.
But nevertheless, have underlying those strong values that I care about, and I am committed to serve my constituents that I love for as long as they will let me to.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Burrowes, for being here with us tonight, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us. Have a good night, and we're back very soon.